I made a movie for Full Moon earlier in 2000 called Witch House 2 Blood Coven, and one of the pickup shots was a sequence that opens the movie out in the middle of the woods that we actually shot back in LA, and it ends with a guy being just brutally chopped up and murdered. That guy was Danny Draven.
Action!
Danny later went on to take over the reins on Horrorvision.
Horrorvision is a combination of old Hollywood film noir with a more modern cyber hacker type edge to it.
Horrorvision actually started life as a project called Fear.com, which is a project that Charlie had been planning on doing for a number of years that had a number of other directors attached to it. And I was supposed to do The Mummy Reborn, and that project didn't happen, so then it became Fear.com. And I wanted to write a new script. They had an existing script for it when it was called Horrorvision.com. But I wanted to come up with something that was my own, so I had a friend named Scott Phillips who had written a movie called Drive that Steve Wang did. It was one of those real high energy, chopsocky kind of flicks. And he happened to be working for me at Full Moon in post-production at the time, so we started talking, and I said, hey, Charlie wants me to do this Sphere.com thing, and I had some ideas and I threw them out to him. I wanted it to be kind of a cross between Videodrome and a movie that I had done years ago, Ozone. Basically, the thematic thing was to have it be some horrible tragedy befalls a guy and he spends the rest of the movie trying to figure out what it is that's happened to him. And it's a pretty common thing, but what worked about it in Ozone was the fact that it was so threadbare. There wasn't a lot going on in the movie. It was what happened to him that made it the way it was, and the style put behind the movie. So my version of Fear.com was a similar story. It was about a web programmer who loses all of his toys, basically. I mean, it was basically my greatest fear come to life.
This sort of apocalyptic world that they live in, it's kind of the world. It's an end of the world kind of story, but an end of the world where it's not God coming back and taking over and sending everyone to hell. It's not a nuclear explosion. It's technology, and technology is what will destroy us ultimately.
When I decided not to direct Horrorvision, I was faced with sort of an awkward task, is to find somebody that could take it that I trusted to do it some justice, so that it would at least be some semblance of what I had intended. And that's not always an easy thing, having produced movies for other people. Generally, those were projects that I was not as creatively involved in their development. I mean, I might have steered the ship, but they were generally things that writers had given, and they wanted to direct it. So that was always a different thing. With this, it was actually something that I had developed, had always intended on making, really liked the script, and now was faced with just total exhaustion from doing Witch House 2 and deciding, okay, I have to give this to somebody else. Danny Draven was somebody that I had met through my old friend Spud, and he had come to Full Moon first as a web programmer, and then later had decided to leave Full Moon and gotten involved in our little crazy, Charles Manson groupie thing that we have at our building where we do all of our post-production and all that.
One day I was upstairs hanging out at JR's, and I was sitting downstairs reading Fangoria, and JR comes downstairs, and Ariana was sitting next to me. She's like, well, she was on her laptop. She's like, oh, you're going to be excited when JR tells you what he's going to tell you. And I was like, well, what's he going to tell me?
I think I said something like, either said things are going to get a lot better or a lot worse. I can't remember what I said. And he looked at me like, Okay, what is that?
All JR came downstairs. He's like, Dan, you know, I'd like to talk to you for a second. I was like, oh, okay, what's going on? He's like, how would you like to direct Horrorvision? And my jaw just kind of like hung open. I was just like, okay.
Originally, we never didn't have a function. He was just a guy that was going to help us make this movie, and I had given him the script, and he really, really liked it. I mean, I think he saw this movie better than I saw this movie, and he is like a complete techno head. And on top of that, he's into the whole goth scene and the whole, you know, which I'm not necessarily into. I mean, you know, everybody likes a good goth chick now and again, but Dan is like, he lives that world. That's his thing. So it kind of, I think the final piece of the puzzle was Dan had given me a short film that he had done called The Worm Family, and he wanted me to see it just to get an idea of what his filmmaking background was. And to be honest with you, I think the biggest thing was, it wasn't even so much the short, although I was very entertained by the short. It was the behind-the-scenes footage he had given me that I thought, where I actually saw him working and saw that, you know, him making a movie was this weird sort of like deja vu thing, like going back in time and seeing my, you know, like somebody like Sam Raimi, when I had done The Dead Next Door, must have seen when he was looking at my stuff saying, I should hire this guy should make a movie for me.
He had from day one, when he was assigned and he got this movie, a vision. And I think that's what makes this movie great, because it's important when you're producing movies. My theory is, don't fight the director. Do what he wants. Put it up on the screen.
I said, this is fabulous.
When Charlie and I discussed the series of movies, certainly one of the big things that would set even these lower budget movies apart from stuff that I had done earlier was a professional director of photography. I mean, that is the person that makes your movie look the way it's going to look. So Charlie has had a long-standing relationship with Mac Ahlberg, and Mac goes back to, you know, Parasite with Charlie, I think, was their first movie, and had done Reanimator, and, you know, he did Innocent Blood for John Landis, he did, you know, Striking Distance, he's done a ton of movies.
Here's a guy that has worked with Ingmar Bergman in Sweden, and he shot some of my all-time favorite horror movies, namely Reanimator and From Beyond.
You know, when Charlie threw out the suggestion, was like, is Mac going to want to do this? Isn't this too small for Mac? But no, Mac was completely up for it. Mac is one of those people that the less you give him, the happier he seems to be, because he will make something out of that. He will, you know, if you tell him, well, Mac, here's a camera, and we're not sure if we have a tripod today, but can you shoot anyways? I mean, he would probably, you know, go, well, I will do what I can for your JR.
You know, I'm rushing him along, you know, come on, get this, come on, we're in Burbank, and, you know, there's 20 cop cars around, so I'm sure he got really irritated with me. I mean, just great to work with, and you'd be surprised at how well he adapted to our low-budget filmmaking.
God, I swear that this was a baby that came out sideways in terms of the casting, this movie, and I don't know why. We had plenty of good people read for us, but for some reason it was just very tough to pin the people down. The easiest one, after we knew Ariana wasn't going to play Dazzy, was Maggie Rose Fleck as Dazzy. She was certainly the best actress that read for us.
Honestly, I was reading it while I was in the tub, and I had the candlelight going, and I actually started to get scared, and I thought, is this the reaction I'm supposed to be getting? You know, because there are these creatures that I really have no idea what they're going to look like in the end.
I really like Dazzy. I mean, her character she's cute, and she's got kind of a playful thing about her, and I like that about her.
I don't know if Dazzy knows about synth. So she may have seen me from the monitor. I'm not exactly sure how the technology works, if she could interact. But, I mean, if it could, I think her eyes, watch her eyes, because they kind of dart, you know, over Daz's shoulder, and that's where I am. So she was looking at me.
I think for a while, poor Maggie thought she wasn't going to have any other cast to act with, because for a while it certainly seemed like there wasn't going to be. And in particular, the part of Dez was like a on and off again thing. We went through at least 2 different people, and the original guy who was our choice, which was Jake, wound up not working out for whatever reasons, and it was a total misunderstanding on my part and on his part. We, thought he wasn't going to be willing to work under the parameters that we were doing these movies and the lower budgets that came with them. And it turns out he really wanted to do it very badly, and we had moved on to somebody else who didn't really work out. And then I came back to him and said, well, guess what? This rarely happens in the film business, but you got another shot at this, and we want you to do it. And he was, a real trooper about the whole thing, and he certainly didn't have to be, because we put him through, the usual hell that comes with no-budget filmmaking.
Well, we jumped right in. I mean, I found out like the day before that we were going to be shooting, just jumping right in. We were going day to day, and we were getting the sides for the pages for the next day, and we're just going.
It was the schedule was probably one of the toughest things, but it was also very exciting and very fun, and we just had a blast.
So I'm really glad that we got him in the movie. And he was just a doll to work with. I never complained, went through hell and back. It was burning up in the desert, and they're all wearing black, and he was just really good. And we had a lot of fun with our scene. And the really interesting thing about Jake is it was really weird for me at points, because I'm a big Bruce Campbell fan from Evil Dead and, Army of Darkness and all that stuff. And every now and then you'll be acting with him, and you'll look over and it's like, that's really weird. It's like you're acting with somebody else, and he's got a really good sense of humor, like Bruce, too. So it was kind of interesting.
I'm Bradbury.
James Black started with me in 1991 back in Akron, Ohio, or as we like to refer to it, Action, Ohio. And he was actually a college friend of a guy who produced a bunch of my movies in Ohio, Scott Plummer. And Scott and James were the class clowns, which, if anybody that knows James Black, this is a stretch to think that James Black could be a class clown.
James Black. Oh, my God. Now, here's the guy that wakes up every morning and polishes his bald head.
I take a clean cloth and I rub it until it shines.
And I'm sure he puts that cape on from Horrorvision every morning and walks around and tries to get some chicks on it or something. I know he still wears that cape around the house.
I still got the cape, so I wear it, when I'm sweeping around the house, cleaning up. Usually when I make my bed, I have the cape on.
Ozone was a movie that was largely made predominantly with James and I. He is the kind of actor that is willing to just do whatever it takes to get the movie done, and he'll pitch in wherever. And that, not that I haven't had that experience with other actors, because there's been plenty of other actors that have, but with James, it's not even an issue. It's like, what can I do? Is there something I can do to help? He's not so much anymore because he's Mr. Hollywood now.
There was no audition process because I've known JR for a long time. I think that when the character was written, he had me in mind to begin with, which was a very complimenting thing. I was flattered.
After Ozone, James left me and went to Hollywood.
He made me get him coffee to be in the movie. He said, James, if you get me coffee, and it's good coffee, then you, sir, can be in Horrorvision.
Bradbury, he's actually a martial artist, So he's come up to me, we're talking about what we're going to do, and he's like, yeah, I'm thinking of doing a little, like, and he's going, like, faster than that, because I don't have any training, He's, like, twice as fast. And I was like, oh, my God, this guy's going to kill me,
James Black. He's the funniest man. He's a blast.
The cape actually was, I found it at Full Moon in an old box. And I looked at it and I was like, wow, this is cool. We should put Bradbury in this, so there you see it in the movie.
The part was written for him, the whole Bradbury thing, and it was sort of a tie to Ozone, which I always felt like Horrorvision was kind of a sister project from Ozone.
My cape is credit, right?
One of the things about Full Moon, which I like, is they let me do my own stunts. I can do my own stunts and other things, but they let me, go at it. I got a chance to fly through the air, and you're going to get to see that. That's a lot of fun. And wrestle with monsters, you never get a chance to do that enough.
James was an interesting one to work with. He was a strong character at the original read-through, he was changing the lines before we'd even heard the first way that they're supposed to be written.
We're also now working on is The Vault, which is going to be directed by James Black.
Synth was a really interesting role to cast because we went through so many people. Originally it was written for this other guy that JR knew, and he backed out at the last minute. And then we were going to change it into a girl, which was interesting. The director wanted to change it to a girl because I had originally said, you know, why don't we make Synth a girl, because I want to play that part, you know. So we made Synth a girl, and we cast another girl. And she was unable to do it because of scheduling conflicts. So finally, we were going through all the tapes, and I was like, oh, Josh, it's just a wonderful look. He's such an interesting look, and he really had a great personality. He really wasn't right for Des, but we needed to really utilize that personality somewhere. So we thought, oh, great, Synth.
Remember that guy Synth from Horrorvision? That was awesome. When he shot and got killed and the whistle was on his face. I mean, you never know, because there's a following, and you know, not every movie has millions of dollars to work with, but it's challenging at times, but fun too, because you know, you don't have a lot of rehearsal, so it's just like, okay, this is what we're doing, do it.
And another thing about Josh, he's a real trooper because for some reason he had this allergic reaction to this makeup, and it's pretty standard makeup that everybody uses in Hollywood. And I just remember getting this call on set, and the makeup artist, Michelle, was just like, oh, we have a problem. And it started to really spread up his arm, and he was just like, really, we were going to have to take him to the hospital. We were getting so worried. But then, you know, we called a couple people, and he was fine. And again, a real trooper. He only shot one day with us.
You know, I'm very excited to be there. But then, you know, at the same time, when you start seeing wet wire and all kinds of weird creatures, you know, just like anyone else, you're like, oh, my God, what the hell is this? And you know, I thought I was going to some great party, and then I ended up getting fried. And I do think that Des and Bradbury, they did get attached to Synth. I mean, there was love there. I mean, look at the scenes. Look at their eyes. There's love there.
And the hair just definitely works.
Ward Bolt, the photographer, is sort of a long story, but the short version of it is I had met guy named Mike Rasso years ago, probably 10 years ago or more. Mike and I had kept in touch through the years, and he eventually decided he wanted to become a distributor and put out a bunch of movies, and he used my library of movies as sort of a guinea pig to get his label started, and then eventually built that up. And somehow, I'm not entirely certain, he had gotten a hold of a photographer in LA named Ward Bolt.
I try to stay within myself and keep it simple, and look to the model to give me something. Because it's both of us, and if I'm shooting a Brink Stevens or a Linnea Quigley, I have to be open to what they bring, and I just try to keep it that simple, and the pictures usually turn out really cool.
I really liked his style of photography. He had a very dark feel, almost like they were almost like horror erotica, and it was. I liked the way he had like blood, and he had these girls with like knives and stuff like that, and it definitely fit Horrorvision. So I'm really happy with Ward, and I really like his stuff. He's definitely my favorite photographer.
I like to be the first splatter photographer.
It was so much fun to shoot at Ward's studio because we'd been working together for about a year. He rapidly became my favorite photographer. His black and whites are being incredible. And after I've been going to this loft over and over, and Ward is taking pictures of me, suddenly I'm playing Ward, more or less. I'm living in his space. His work is supposed to be my work. Whoa, you know, what a weird kind of karmic juxtaposition where suddenly I'm him. I just thought it was really cool, and Ward thought it was very poetic as well.
I knew part of the whole bit with Horrorvision had to be this website. Ariana had been discussing the photos that would make up the Horrorvision website with Dan, and suggested Ward, and I put in a phone call to him, very preliminary, and eventually we beat him down to our budget range, and got him to contribute a bunch of photos, and there's cameos. I don't know if people realize this, but there's cameos in those photos because you have, not only do you have other shots of Brink Stevens, not as her character Tony, but you have Linnea Quigley in those photos, and you have Amber Newman.
I've seen his pictures a lot, and I don't, actually I think it was JR had mentioned something about how he wanted to photograph me. And so I started looking at his pictures, and I never did end up doing the photo session yet. I will. And we were sitting around, and they were in a meeting, and they were like, well, who are we going to get to do these photos? And I was like, well, Ward Bolt. He's perfect, you know. I was like, wow, why didn't I think of that? But his pictures are just absolutely perfect for this film. This is exactly what this movie needed.
So they ended up using my leather jacket, my studio, my pictures, and my cat.
Brink Stevens, Scream Queen.
Another thing I liked about the movie was the fact that I probably died more times than any actress in Hollywood, and this was a new one, death by pixelation. I've never had that happen before.
Yeah, I loved working with Brink Stevens. I thought that was just one of the biggest highlights of directing Horrorvision was getting to direct Brink Stevens. I think because, I mean, when I was growing up, I saw Sorority Babes on the Slimeball Bullerama on like USA Up All Night, and I loved it. I don't know what it was about that movie. It was like Gilbert Gottfried hosting it or something. But it was just great. I loved it. I loved that little imp, even though it was the cheesiest looking thing in the world. It was just funny. It was hilarious.
What you see behind me here is some of the original artwork, which was never used for Sorority Babes back when it was still titled The Imp. Probably nobody has ever seen this. And Horrorvision's director, Danny, found this in the dumpster at full moon. They were throwing it away.
We always, of course, inevitably talked about doing something together, and I think for the longest time, probably up until just with Horrorvision, she thought I was just full of baloney, that nothing was ever going to happen. But lo and behold, eventually we were able to get her in something, and she came out and really did me a gigantic favor by being in Horrorvision, since the budget was very, very low.
So I was really pleased when the director, Danny Draven, wanted me in the movie. JR asked me about Horrorvision, and I thought it was a great script. I said, absolutely. It's the first time we got to really work together on a film.
Okay, and JR knew that he wanted Brink Stevens to be in this movie. He's been trying to work with her for a long time. So I was thinking, well, if you have a Scream Queen, and you might as well open the movie with her. Plus, she's got to be killed. I mean, there's no use having a Scream Queen unless she's going to be killed.
Well, then JR calls me up to offer me the part in Horrorvision and says that I die on page 10. Well, it's getting worse. Next month, I shoot a movie where I die on page 3. This is a trend that has to stop soon.
Brink has this great scream, you know. We got that great because she's such a pro.
Even death scenes do require some acting. For example, I'm supposed to be facing computer monitors and seeing something horrific on the screen when actually it's just a white bounce board with a light in front of it to light my face. And then there's 2 guys on either side of me and 1 person behind me that are cable wranglers. And then we've got these weird long plastic tubes and things, and they're shaking them. And the noise, for one thing, is frightening enough, but they shake them up over behind me and around me and start choking me with it. My hair is getting tangled in the cables and being pulled out and everything, and I'm trying to scream and pretend I'm being strangled. So that was really cool. It was fun to do.
David Barton and I go back to 1978 when we were in 7th grade, and we were reading some Scholastic magazine in junior high school that had Star Wars on the cover. We were fighting over it or something, and we both realized we were Star Wars retards, so we decided that, we should, make movies. We always had this competitive thing as far as making movies together growing up. Eventually, he decided to go into makeup effects. I decided to stay making movies. His first real break at that was The Dead Next Door, where there was a big chunk of it that he did. He and I had kind of gone in different directions for a number of years, and then I think it was Ozone, actually, going back to this being a sister project of Horrorvision, that sort of I called him out of the blue and said, I'm making this movie for ridiculously cheap, and I need this, 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 and this. And he goes, okay, well, I'll do it. It was more of like a charity effort than anything else.
Let's talk cash.
In Horrorvision, we have this ball, which is pretty much a Death Star model that's been painted, and we rolled it down the hall and add some sound effects and some noises, and that's your Whistler.
The Whistlers were Manifesto's minions, and they took the shape of a ball in order to, travel quickly and go after their prey or whatever it was, and I had to do a transition between the whistler and the ball. I mean, ideally, you would have liked to have had a mechanical effect where the whistler actually rolled up into the ball, but you know, budgetary constraints being what they were, we actually had to do it in the computer.
Wetwire was actually a separate creature in the original Horrorvision script. There were actually 4 creatures, and the Wetwire you see in the movie, his name was actually Barkafar. So it was between those 4, we had to cut one because of money. So we ended up taking Wetwire name and replacing it with the Barkafar name, because Barkafar, to me, sounds like a Smurf.
Dave Barton provided a large, it was like a waist apparatus, looked like a big wrestling belt that went around his waist, and below that I took out his legs, and so he was supposed to sort of look like he was attached to this big machine without any legs, and he sort of comes out, and I provided a light, and like I said, smoke below that, and I think the effect came off pretty well. It looks pretty convincing.
And then, of course, we have Manifesto, the 8-foot creature in the desert, played by David Greathouse, who actually he played baby Oopsie Daisy in the Doll Man vs. Demonic Toys movie.
What I did is I added some electrical effects on him to give it the effect that he's like, you know, he's going to start breaking apart, and added some sparks and stuff. And the big climax with him is at the end, he finally explodes into obliteration, and I just overlapped all kinds of explosions and stuff on him, and I even put like a big shock wave on it to give it like a really big effect of him exploding, and he explodes in this blue smoke, and I think that turned out pretty well.
And he's on like these 2-foot drywall stilts in the desert. It's windy as hell, and he could barely stand up. He had a 30-pound head on for Manifesto. He had to have his neck down when he was doing it, and if he fell, it would break.
I had to do, I think, like, I don't even know what the exact number was, but it was like 70-some odd visual effects shots in like 2 weeks.
We had a great crew. Most of our crew was completely green, new to this. A lot of them weren't, but most of them were. And it was we really broke them in with our low-budget filmmaking. So they know what guerrilla filmmaking's like.
The crew seems to be, getting along. This place is trashed. This is my personal apartment here, and as you can see, it's a fucking mess. There's makeup bags, computers, food, lights, stuff. I've already blown every fuse in the house. My guitar has been broken. Lots of stuff has been broken of mine, but, what are you gonna do? Making a movie.
Spud, for whatever reason, always seems to have these just piece of shit cars laying around.
And the first thing he said to me is, well, that car would be cool for the lead character in Horrorvision. So I him-hawed, and he buttered me up, and finally he talked me into letting him use that car for Horrorvision.
Between Dan and I abused him and said, well, we're going to use your car, Spud. Is that cool? And he's like, what? Excuse me? No, you're not going to use my car. And eventually, we wound up using it. And he's like, well, James Black's not allowed to be on my car. I don't want him, I don't want him sitting on it. You're going to dent the hood. And, well, James Black's on top of the car. And I don't know about putting those car mounts on my car. And, well, there's a car mount on there.
So, I got it basically ready to go. And they use it throughout the movie. And they broke things here and there. I was going to kill him.
So, God bless Spud, because he puts up with a lot of crap from all of us.
They ended up tearing the back seat open a little bit, and then they played the radio too loud, blew the speakers out on it. And then I had this nasty habit of overheating. I don't know why. So it was a nightmare through the entire movie.
Certainly Horrorvision was not an easy show by any stretch of the imagination. It was a show that was spread all over the city of Los Angeles, which is the most difficult city to shoot a movie in anywhere. I mean, you could probably go murder somebody in the middle of a main street in New York City and get away with it, but the minute you drag a camera onto a street in Los Angeles, you are busted.
And there was these guys putting these like poles in the ground on this desert land. And we just put on one. Hi, how you doing? We're going to make a movie. Can we shoot on your land? And the guy, I'm not even kidding, turns around and goes, sure. That's the desert you see in the movie.
As guerrilla as our filmmaking team was on this movie, and it was a very small crew, we were able to accommodate a lot of that just by stealing shots and, you know, stealing locations. And, you know, there were some scenes that were staged right at Hollywood and Vine, right, you know, outside of where Full Moon's office is. And it was just became a matter of, you know, here's what you have to do: pull up, you get out, say the lines, and gone. You know, and get off the street in a you know, quickly before somebody sees you.
I think directing Horrorvision was my 12-day film school.
She takes me on a trip inside my curiosity.